Hello, everybody. This is MonteCristo, and today we're going to be taking a look at the LCS viewership for spring 2024 and how it compares to previous years of LCS and probably some sneaky tactics that Riot is going to be using to massage these numbers to probably sound better than they really are, and what this means for the league. Of course, remember to like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. Let me start out with some things that I really did like from this season of LCS. Even though I rarely watch the games live and I watch VODs, I think that the idea of pre-recording drafts to accelerate, or I should say accelerate the speed of the broadcast / decrease the time in between games was a very good idea. Across all of esports, it is just a truism that the longer you're away from gameplay, when gameplay is not on the screen, you just bleed viewers no matter how good your in-between game content is. And really the battle you're fighting with analyst desks or with shoulder content is to lose the fewest number of viewers, not in fact to retain or add viewership, concurrent viewers to your broadcast, because that's just when people tune out. So by having less downtime, you probably actually increase your average concurrent viewers, which is a stat that we did see. So credit to Mark Z there. I also liked a lot of the aesthetic and tonal changes to the broadcast. I thought it was much more fun, much more dynamic. And even though LCS couldn't actually control this, we ended up with a much more entertaining split competitively. Perhaps the decrease by 2 teams made it so there were fewer a smaller pool of potential players that could be in the league, which led to more competition to fill those slots, so an average level of quality. I also think, and Dom has brought this up many times, that the point of salaries actually going down on average made sure that we didn't get a bunch of washed up former pros in the league, and instead we had the opportunity to see players who really, really actually wanted to compete in North America, particularly on some of the lower tier teams. We got a bunch of imports, but they ended up being pretty darn good for the most part. So the league was very entertaining from a competitive standpoint, even though I would say the level of play wasn't any higher than we've typically come to expect from the LCS over the years. But there is that element of, simply the games being more fun to watch. Now, again, that's not in the control of the actual, tournament organizer, but it's something that, we have access to as an audience. Basically, I think Mark Z has done good work on the product side of LCS, and the product was competitively better for reasons outside of Riot's control. These are all very positive factors, and I think the smaller league has made it more compelling, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's done better things for viewership, and we really have to dig in to a lot of what Riot has said in the past, what the viewership has been in the past, and what this means for possible sponsorships and the future of LCS as a league, because it is, I hate to say it, kind of in a death spiral right now, and it has been for a number of years, and a slight increase this year is probably not as good of a thing as you think it is, because it matters who and where the increase is coming from, which is not going to say very good things. So let's take a look at some of the changes that were made this split. Now, crucially, there were 2 major co-streamers that were added, and I'm looking at ES charts right now. This is kind of the gold standard. This is a partner of many of the broadcasters around the world and tournament organizers. For example, when I ran Flashpoint, we used to work with ES Charts just to get metrics and data for our events. And they do write analysis pieces. And this is talking about the LCS Spring 2024, weeks 1 through 4. And they mention Caedrel and Baiano. Now, Caedrel, you probably all know if you're an English-speaking fan of League of Legends at this point in time. He's a major co-streamer. And Baiano, who is a major Portuguese, Brazilian co-streamer. Now, neither of these guys was given co-streaming rights last year, right? So a little bit strange that suddenly they're very valuable. But it turns out that most of the boosts that we saw in LCS was actually due to co-streamers. And that is not going to be good when it comes to potentially the actual audience numbers and the demographics that we're going to talk about here. And what is really important to the LCS, and what's important is North American viewers to their sponsors. And it's not really going to be a bunch of random Brazilians and Europeans who are coming into the stream. As you can see here, They do talk a little bit about comparisons. You can look this up on ES Charts as well, these articles. And so we do have a slight increase after 4 weeks to the average concurrent viewership, which is good on its face, but again, not as good when you really dig into it. Now we're going to look at the total viewership. So as we can see, here's LCS Spring 2024. We are going to see peak viewership of 246,000, average viewership at 120,000, hours watched at 10.7 million, and airtime at 89 hours. Now, the most important metrics for tournament operators and for sponsors, number one is probably hours watched, because that just simply shows if you have a logo on the stream, how many hours are going to be watched with your logo on there. And secondly is probably average concurrent viewers. Peak viewers is not actually that important, guys. Average viewership is a little bit more important, and it's pretty close as to which is more important depending on what the sponsor's looking for between hours watched and average viewership. So as we can see here, it's 120,000 average viewers and 10.7 million hours watched. Now, the hours watched are obviously going to be going down this split because they only had 8 teams instead of 10. So they had fewer matches, both in the regular season and in playoffs, because it was 6 teams in playoffs instead of 8 teams in playoffs. So you didn't have as much of a robust bracket. So those are things that are going to affect the total number of hours watched, even if the average viewership goes up slightly. Now we can compare this immediately to the previous year. LCS Spring 2023. Now here we see a decrease between 2024 and 2023. So they had 271 compared to 246,000 in peak viewership. But again, peak viewership, in my mind, not as important. We saw it jump from 109,000 average viewers to 120. So that's a good thing. Hours watched was about 4 million less in spring this year compared to spring last year. But again, airtime was significantly less, 89 hours compared to 134 hours. Again, this is because we saw fewer matches being played. Also could have been average game time was longer. I'm not going to look into that right now. That's kind of irrelevant. Crucially, though, what we're going to see is average viewers on the main channel is 63,000 and 130,000 on the Twitch channel, whereas here it's 44,000 average viewers and 75,000. So where did these viewers go? The answer is they either went to YouTube or they went to co-streams. And we're going to see a bigger split in the language. So we only have language by peak viewers, but the peak viewership was in spring. They had 24,000 Spanish viewers, almost 250,000 English viewers, whereas the peak viewership of English was 208 compared to 78,000. So a lot of Portuguese, Spanish went way down. I don't know. I think they got rid of the official Spanish broadcast. I don't remember the exact reason why this would have gone down. But the point is that we have more non-English stream watchers effectively in terms of peak viewership. So the question is, what are the other changes that happened? Now, remember, in spring 2023, this was the first split that LCS actually switched days to weekdays because Riot promised us that the data said that it would be an increase in viewership. Now, that was just a lie, and it was completely fucking untrue, because the thing that it did was that it also killed the LEC's ability to raid LCS. So what this means is that they transfer their Twitch viewership from LEC to LCS. Now, a lot of these people are not actively watching the show. They are literally like AFK with the stream on. And so when they get swapped over, we're not talking about an active viewer who is being swapped over. Also, now we can't know whether it was the LEC raids or perhaps the fact that it was in a kind of a pretty bad time slot for the US West Coast and kind of the US in general and on weekdays, which a lot of people complained about. Whether that was a pretty significant decline in viewership. But if there is a theory here, guys, that weekends, if Riot rediscovered that the weekends are better for viewership, then why is the average viewership only increasing 10,000 viewers concurrence by switching back to the better time slot where you're going to get raids from LEC. Raids of tens of thousands of concurrent viewers, by the way, because LCS was then kind of over the course of this split, they kept changing LCS start times so that they would be starting when LEC was over, because whenever there was overlap, LCS would have no viewership. So they kept tweaking the LCS start times like by 30 minutes here and there in order to not be concurrent with LEC, and so they could just LEC raid immediately into this. There's also factors such as CBLOL would happen before LCS, which is the Brazilian league, and Baiano would be co-streaming that, and then he would switch to LCS, and he would have like 65,000 viewers, 60,000 concurrents, and then 30,000 of those viewers would drop immediately, so that he would like have his viewership from going from CBLOL to LCS, but those viewers were still counted even though they like all clicked off. And we see this right here. There is analysis on this. For example, the matches of week 1 were covered by the popular Brazilian streamer Baiano, who has now become an interregional community caster. Baiano primarily broadcasted matches from the domestic CBLOL league, and as they ended, he switched to LCS games, and the majority of his viewers were not particularly interested in LCS. Okay? Watching North American teams on Baiano's channel remained at 20 to 30K peak viewers. The situation occurred on January 21st, when switching from one region to another. Brazilian viewers lingered a bit on Baiano's broadcast. As a result, by the time the match between Cloud9 and 100 Thieves began on his channel, there were 63,000 peak viewers, although this number was reduced to 28,000 by the end of the match, and that's a best of one. It is thanks to this lag that LCS Spring 2024 was able to achieve a good peak online viewership. So they were already, Riot was already, and the co-streamers were already kind of manipulating this transition between LEC and CBLOL and LCS to kind of achieve better numbers. So that's pretty important as well. But what we can say, guys, is that because Caedrel was getting 30, 40,000, Baiano was getting 30,000, we can pretty confidently say that even though average viewership did go up, the number of North American viewers almost certainly went down, right? Because presumably, when we saw the Spanish broadcast here, now, some of these Spanish language fans may have been North American. They could have been Mexican, or they could have been people who live in America or Canada who speak Spanish, of which there are plenty, who are watching this in Spanish. Whereas the Portuguese stream, none of these people are American, guys. None of these people are North American. These are all actual Portuguese people, or most likely they are Brazilians because they're on Baiano's stream. And also Caedrel, even though Caedrel, I'm sure, has a healthy amount of North American fans, probably 2/3, 3/4 of Caedrel's fans who are watching him are probably European. And why it matters that we have North American sponsors, guys, is because LCS, when they take on sponsors, for the most part, they are going to be dipping into North American marketing budgets. Even if it's a major global corporation, it's the American marketing budget that their money is coming out of. And also they have sponsors now like Pagoda, who is a subsidiary of Schwann's, which is a frozen food manufacturer in America. And to my knowledge, Pagoda's egg rolls or spring rolls are not sold anywhere besides America. And certainly they don't care if those are sold beyond maybe America and Canada, right? So advertising to a bunch of Portuguese speakers via co-stream or Europeans via co-stream is not accomplishing the goals of the league. And because we can see, and there were already probably a bunch of AFK Europeans watching LEC that then got transferred over to the LCS channel, we can't know this, but it would not surprise me if now the majority, as in over 50%, of these 120,000 average concurrent viewers are actually not North American. Which is a big problem if you're selling to North American sponsors, because you either, and they ask for your demographic information, like this would be shared, obviously, with sponsors. And what this means is they are either giving you half the rate because only 50% of your audience is North America. So you're either getting like a 50% cut of what, or the 50% price of what you should get for the sponsorship based on the viewership, or the sponsors are just getting fleeced, which probably means that they're not going to be coming back anytime soon. And we've had a lot of sponsors leave. We don't have State Farm on LCS anymore, and they obviously sold insurance in America. And so American viewership was going to be very important, but they left. We saw Budweiser leave, which primary obviously is going to sell beer to a North American audience. And yeah, we've had other brands come in. So recently, like I think like Kia's in for North America now, even though they've been in Europe for a long time. HyperX, I believe they signed a deal with. They've had the Red Bull deal going for a while. But the Red Bull deal also covers LEC and global events. So that might be coming out of their global marketing budget. There is like a bunch of nuances to this. But the take that average viewership is good for the league is not true unless it is North American viewership. And I suspect that this is one of the reasons why Riot is now switching their partnership model from revenue to a stipend, which is what has already been announced. Because viewership, any level of increase in viewership is good for Riot because they sell more skins, but they don't sell the skin. They don't share the skin money with the teams. So basically Riot is saying through their actions that it is less important that we receive partnership revenue than we get the highest possible audience, no matter where these people are from, because the most important thing is that we sell more digital goods and games. And the teams don't know how many digital goods have been sold because Riot doesn't disclose that information to anybody. And that, since this is primarily a marketing exercise, we don't know how much of the actual digital revenue they've tied to esports. Like, for example, do the esports viewers through lolesports.com who have linked their account, do those accounts purchase more on average than the average user? Almost certainly yes is the answer to that. Do these people play more games of League of Legends? Have they played for an average longer period of time? Are they the whales of this scene? In which case, that it makes absolute sense to spend hundreds of millions of dollars potentially on esports if you're seeing a return from these people buying skins. When a famous player plays a skin, does the skin sales hit a huge spike? Now, they're not sharing any of this data with the teams. Instead, they are saying, we're just going to keep this secret. But you know what? Don't worry about the sponsorships anymore. It's now a flat stipend. It's a stipend of, well, I wouldn't say flat. It is a stipend. And you don't have to worry about the revenue split anymore because the revenue split is likely going down, guys, especially because they lost their big sponsor, which was FTX, during the FTX collapse. And FTX was paying them an outrageous sum of money. So, this is all to say that this viewership is like an okay increase on average, but you have fewer hours watched because of the nature of the league. And it's kind of a wash because, the 11K difference in average viewer, there are definitely fewer North American viewers on average watching, in spite of the shift back to weekends, in spite of the changes to the broadcast, in spite of the more competitive games. They just filled this with Brazilians and Europeans. So there you go. Now, we can also look at this historically and say, Monte, why is the LCS in a death spiral? So I don't have, very good data for prior to 2021 because ES Charts is not an OG website. But I do, it turns out, have this little Reddit post of this Reddit user, Aaron SLD, who actually came in and has weekly threads about viewership from a number of years ago. Right? So it's pretty comprehensive from 7-8 years ago. And here is a post of somebody else who has aggregated this. And this is from, I believe, spring or summer 2016. But the point is you're going to be able to see this. So here's LCS. Now, here's the first 5 weeks of LCS. You can see that they used to have 241,000 average viewers for week 1 of regular season games. Okay? Average viewers across 5 weeks. And this is the double streams. So this is this was best of threes, actually, I think. 192,000 viewers per game. Right? EU LCS, 210,000 viewers per game. So, and by the way, LEC viewership has gone up since this time period. LEC has been doing very well. So we've seen a pretty significant drop, and we can, this is pre-COVID, and there was a COVID boost because people couldn't do other things, and we'll be taking a look at that in 2021 and 2022. But you can see that the average viewership average concurrent used to be much higher in like 2016, 2017. And LCS is the only one to suffer from this because actually LCK keeps hitting new highs. LPL is doing great. LEC viewership is way up because we've had the big co-streamers, like Kometo and Ibai joining and really boosting that viewership. So it really is just LCS that is suffering from its heights. And if we roll the clock back to spring 2021, this is like in the peak of COVID, right? Now we're looking at 415,000 peak viewers and 175,000 average concurrents. So this is a huge drop, 55,000 concurrents, and you're down from 415,000 to 246,000. So this is a massive drop from 2021. Even from 2022, you're still looking at 387,000 and 123,000 average. And so we've lost viewership from that point forward too. Right? So this is a pretty big shift. Again, fewer broadcast hours, but we're just looking at the average concurrent viewers. Even CBLOL. So CBLOL, their spring split, this is this year. So this tournament ongoing. By the way, CBLOL hasn't ended yet. This is not the finals, which is probably going to be the biggest viewership. They had 346,000 peak viewers, 21 million hours watched, 161,000 average concurrents. Baiano, obviously the biggest streamer here. He's bigger than the mainstream now. He's the Tarek of CBLOL. So you look at this and you're like, oh shit, like this hasn't even ended yet. And they're already crushing LCS when it comes to viewership. So, this is a pretty massive problem, I would say. And having a slightly, Riot's going to spin this to be like, average viewership is up, guys. But they're not talking about why it's up. And it's like LEC hosts, Caedrel, Baiano, non-North American viewers, switch back to weekends. And it just, we have to ask so many questions about this, such as, why did we switch off of weekends in the first place? We were told that the data said that the switch to weekdays would be better. It surely couldn't have been because we wanted to put Valorant on the weekends and we had to bump League of Legends, right? That couldn't have been it. We don't have a pattern of bumping League of Legends for Valorant or anything like that. Oh, wait, we still have that. And we're going to get into that too, because that probably affected viewership in some way. And also, we continue to schedule things on weird days like Easter. We have now taken away the excitement of a stadium event in the spring and just had, a weird guy sing Rise in the studio. And we don't actually have a spring split finals anymore in a stadium like we did in Raleigh, North Carolina in 2023. So now only summer gets the roadshow event because, we're not cutting budget, guys, as we fire a bunch of the people on LCS in our layoffs and then don't do a stadium event. Yeah, okay, reasonable. So, yeah, the changes that were made. And also, here's a question for you guys. It's a logical chain. If we like co-streamers because they have increased our average viewer count, then what changed from spring 2024, from spring 2023 to spring 2024, where all of a sudden we like Baiano and Caedrel co-streaming? So was co-streaming a bad idea a year ago, but now it's a good idea? Because Caedrel wasn't allowed to co-stream LCS last year. And even going further back, if co-streaming LCS is such a genius idea, then why did they have it? So several years ago, people could only co-stream the super weeks in the playoffs, but they couldn't co-stream most of the regular season. So tell me, if it's a good idea, why didn't we do it before? And if we've discovered it was a good idea, how come we didn't fire the people who were claiming it was a bad idea previously? If it's such a genius move to have Baiano bring a bunch of Portuguese viewers to co-stream LCS, why didn't we just let him do it last year? right? Like, it doesn't make any sense, these decisions. So if you're saying that any increase in average viewership is good for LCS, then we absolutely should have made these decisions previously to add major co-streamers. But they didn't let Caedrel do it, and they didn't let Baiano do it, and I would love to know the reasoning behind that. So my suspicion is that this isn't actually a good thing. Like, it's not actually good for esports to have major co-streamers that can even be bigger than the main broadcasts. I think that's very actually bad for tournament control over esports, which you want, because you're not part of a fickle co-streamer who may just leave your game at any point in time or retire and then take your viewership with it. I think it's actually very bad. But many people like watching co-streams, and it does seem the way that a lot of broadcasts are going. Not just in League of Legends, but obviously in every major esport. So if you want this, why didn't we learn this lesson sooner would be my main question. And then we just have a bunch of super puzzling decisions that were made about this league in general, which we can see when it comes to the schedule. So as we start, we started this year. I'll switch over here so you can see it. On January 20th, 2024. You're like, okay, 20th, 27th, February 2nd. Okay, February 10th. Wait, March 2nd? What happened here? Why do we have a 3-week break with nothing in there? Well, I'll tell you why, guys. Because VCT Americas was happening in the studio, and that needed to run on weekends for whatever reason. And so Valorant basically just supplanted League of Legends because they were running their group stages during that period of time. And even when we came back to the studio, guys, they had to do that weird-ass cage match thing because they couldn't use the main stage because Valorant was using it the same day. So it literally got pushed off for Valorant. And that wasn't the only time either, because as we fast forward to the playoffs, now remember, we've been running Saturday, Sunday, the entire split. Super Weeks, we ran Friday, Saturday, Sunday, okay? Now, all of a sudden, okay, round 1 of playoffs, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Makes sense. We've got best of 5s that we need to run 1 a day. All right, I feel you. We'll add Thursday and Friday. Okay, round 2 of playoffs. Wait, why are we Friday, Saturday, but no, where's Sunday? Where's Sunday, guys? Oh, it turns out that VCT America's finals, Gen G versus Sentinels, was on Sunday. You might say to yourself, well, was that in North America? Nope. It was in Madrid, in Spain, in Europe. And guess what? LEC also got moved off that day. Now, I don't think there's a lot of, in fact, Riot themselves have said that there's not a lot of crossover audience between League of Legends and Valorant esports, but they cleared off both LEC and LCS off that Sunday so that these finals would be the only Riot event going. Okay? So they have been manipulating the schedule very specifically to pander to Valorant, even when it is on a different fucking continent than the LCS. And why this matters for viewership is it's confusing to not have it on Sunday all of a sudden when it's been on Sunday every week. It's confusing to have a 3-week break in the middle of the regular split when people get this into, they get into the groove of watching. It's also terrible to have it on Super Bowl Sunday. Did they take Super Bowl Sunday off? No, they didn't. They did a broadcast on Super Bowl Sunday, and then they took a bunch of weeks off. Because it wasn't about Super Bowl Sunday. It was about when the group stage for VCT Americas were. So I guess they couldn't, quote unquote, move it off that Super Bowl Sunday and take a break, on Super Bowl Sunday instead. And then the creme de la creme, the shit cherry on the shit Sunday of their decision making, is that they once again ran the finals on Easter Sunday. Okay? So let's go back here. Now, it happened on March 31st. Bearing in mind that LEC, LPL, and LCK, as of the time I'm recording this on April 9th, have still not finished their splits. So they had plenty more time to play this finals. LCS did not have to end on March 31st. They could have taken a week off. They could have actually taken a week off between regular season and playoffs, right? That kind of would have made sense. But no, we had to play it on Easter Sunday. And by the way, guys, last year, they were criticized for playing the finals on Easter Sunday in spring when they did their event in Raleigh. And let me tell you something, guys. doing something on Easter Sunday in the South, in America, no wonder that stadium wasn't full. People have family plans. People are doing other things, especially in arguably the most Christian part of America. So let's just actually take a look at our best friend, John Needham, head of Riot Esports, in an interview that he did with Travis Gafford, where Travis Gafford asks him about scheduling. Now, he said this a year ago, April 20th, 2023, in this interview about Easter Sunday. You guys ready?
Yeah, it was a mistake. It was unfortunate, and it's also unfortunate that we did finals on Easter, which I don't think was optimal either. We had to pivot the LCS finals fairly late, and venues were, it was difficult to land a venue, so we got a little stuck in what weekend we could do finals on. But as far as the times go, it's just a miss, man. And
so we had to pivot because of venues. So because of venues, it's unfortunate, and it was not optimal to have it on Easter Sunday. But this year, you don't have any venue. You own the venue that you're in. You own it. You have time to move it to a later date that isn't Easter Sunday. You intentionally chose Easter Sunday in the venue that you own, but last year you admit it was suboptimal to have it on Easter, and the only reason it happened was because of scheduling issues. And hey, guys, do you know why? Do you know why that stadium was available on Easter Sunday? Because it's a stupid time to have a live event. Because it's stupid. But you had your own stadium this time. You had your own arena. What are you doing? You don't have to end the LCS on March 31st. You have time. MSI is until, May 2nd? Other regions are still going on. There was no reason we had to schedule the league this way. There was no reason we had to move days because of VCT finals in fucking Madrid. Like, I just don't understand. And yet they will continue to crow about this viewership, even though they have, first off, done things that have definitely affected the viewership. It is, the takeaways here is it's clearly LCS viewership is not a priority compared to Valorant. It is also just, not a priority in general. And they don't care who is watching LCS as long as number goes up. But the thing is that sponsor number will not go up with what they're doing. And in fact, the core audience of North America fans is almost certainly decreased. It's almost certainly at its lowest level ever. And there's not really another way to interpret this. So I really wonder about the LCS. As for solutions, we know what the solution is. The solution is to create an America's League like we saw with VCT. In Valorant, they have Brazil, Latin America, and North America all as one league. And I think that on a long enough timeline, I actually think it's going to happen pretty fast, if we're going to be honest, because I think they're trying desperately to save this thing, is that there will be some combo made of CBLOL, LLA, and LCS. That's my theory, especially because they keep putting people from Brazil in charge of Riot League of Legends esports for Americas. And because I think, to be fair, VCT Americas has been highly successful. The viewership is good. You get very good, regional rivalries and engagement. And I think it would frankly be better for LCS. I approve of this merger. It will probably take them buying out a number of teams, like they bought out, Evil Geniuses at the start of this split, at the start of this year, in order to make that happen, because you actually have to reduce the number of both Brazilian and LCS teams in order not to oversaturate it with too many teams. But I think my guess is that in switching the team participation agreement and saying our new proposal is stipends, another secret part of this is in fact potentially the ability to merge CBLOL and LCS and possibly also LLA. I think that's probably a behind the scenes thing that they may have done. At least they've discussed it. And will it go into action quickly? Like for 2025, I don't know. I think they might move as fast as 2025 to consolidate these leagues. I think it would be welcomed by many of the ownership groups, especially because they are trying desperately to make money and show number go up, so they could possibly get more investment from the outside if venture capital starts to return, if federal interest rates go down. So I think there are a lot of factors to this, and I think ultimately that the way to stop the death spiral is to merge regions. Riot surely knows this, but there isn't anything about these numbers that makes you believe that this is going to solve itself, or because they've now pulled basically every rabbit out of the hat. They moved it back to weekends. They got the LEC raids. They allowed the big co-streamers in. The next step might be allowing like Ibai and Kometo in to they might open the co-streaming floodgates even further to try and make number go up. That's probably the last possible thing they could do. But it's never going to hit those old numbers that we saw ever again. It's not. You also lost TSM, the most popular team from your league. That took a lot of the fans with it. So I think what you're going to end up seeing is a pretty drastic change within the ecosystem of League of Legends in the Americas as a result of this. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this analysis. If you guys have any points, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Remember, of course, to like and subscribe. Thank you very much. See you next time.